Greetings to all Africans on the continent of Africa and across the entire world. I am King Echu, the radical Pan-African activist from Ambazonia. Africans, we must think radical because we are living in a radical world that does not have the interests of global black people. For the past 500 years, you know what has happened with black people in this world. What's going on right now? How many wars are going on in the continent of Africa? Africans. We have war everywhere in the continent. War in Sudan, war in Ethiopia, war in Nigeria, war in Central African Republic, everywhere war. War in Chad, war in Mali, war in Burkina Faso, war. As a matter of fact, I was going through this as I started thinking about the song sung by Bob Marley, the great Bob Marley, the king of reggae music. A song that he sang in 1976, war everywhere, war in the south, war in the east, war in the north, war everywhere, war. This is what is happening in 2023. We are in 2023. This song was sung in 1976, War by Bob Marley. But there's war everywhere in the continent of Africa. War in Burkina Faso, war in DRC Congo, war in Niger, war in Senegal, war in Libya, war in South Sudan, war in Cameroon, war in Mozambique. Many African countries are in war. Africans, have you questioned to think and ask, why is that there's so many wars in the continent of Africa? Yes, some of it is due to the leadership contribution of Africans, but that's not only because of the leadership of Africans that we have wars in the continent of Africa. When Bob Marley was alive in 1976, he sang a song about war that is still being felt today. You need to listen to that song because it will make you to think and question what is going on in this world. Why is there war in every part of Africa? North Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa. It doesn't matter. There's war in some part in the continent of Africa. War going on. Why can't we stop these wars? Why can't we build better Africa for the future of all Africans? These are the questions that Africans must think about and ask to come with conclusion of what needs to be done for the growth of Africa, for the growth of the people of Africa. Wars. Why are we going through so many wars? You may ask. But one thing you seem to forget. You think that the United Nations has the interests of Africa, but that's not true. The United Nations does not have the interests of Africa. The United Nations is there to bring other nations from the United Nations, those nations that are pillar of the United Nations, to Africa to exploit the resources of Africa. And because Africa is mineral resource in the continent, there's bound to be war because other nations want to exploit those resources with no payment, pretty much. So what they do is create wars. They use tribalism that we have within us as Africans. We use other Africans. We think that other Africans of different tribes as less than, are not intelligent enough, are not worthy enough to have a position, to be in whatever positions they are lesser than. And because of that, we go to wars. Those wars are instigated by nations within the United Nations. IMF exploit the wars in United Nations. France exploit the wars in Africa. Excuse me. France exploit the wars in Africa. IMF exploits the wars in Africa. European Union exploit the wars in Africa. European countries exploit the wars in Africa. And through the United Nations, that has been in a nation like DRC Congo, where is the richest mineral nation in the world. The United Nations has been there in DRC Congo, and with other nations exploited the resources and created wars. So how can we stop these wars from happening? That is the question that all Africans must think and act. Without which, the continent of Africa will continue to have wars, will continue to fight among themselves, will continue to kill themselves. Meanwhile, other nations will take their resources for themselves and become rich, and will be running towards their country and will be treated less than human beings because they don't see the humanity of black people. It doesn't matter if it's Arabs, it doesn't matter if it's European, it doesn't matter if it's whatever race, Indians, Japanese, Chinese. They don't give a damn about African, but they give a damn about the resources that Africa has. And because of that, we will continue to have wars. Wars in Sudan, wars in Ethiopia, war in Nigeria, war in Central African Republic. When would these wars ever end in the continent of Africa? Africans, we need to ask these questions. When will the wars in the continent of Africa end? Why can't there be peace in the continent of Africa? Why can't there be prosperity in the continent of Africa? Why is it that other nations must use other tribes in the continent of Africa to fight among themselves so that they could reap off the benefit of the resources for themselves? This is why this is why there's so many wars. If you look at the two generals that are fighting in Sudan, what is the purpose behind that war? One of the general looked down on the other general that he took as a second in command because he was from a different tribe. He was less than. Is that the reason that he's motivated to be the top dog? Maybe. Who knows? But because black people look down on black people and create tribalistic negative tendencies, there's bound to be wars. And these tribalistic tendencies are being exploited by Western nations, by Arab nations, by China, by other race in this world, because they don't give a damn about black people. They don't give a damn about Africans. They give a damn about the resources that is in Africa. And because of the resources, Africa is blessed, and at the same time, Africa is cursed. This is the conundrum that Africa and Africans will always have to face. And we will continue to have wars until we understand the political situation that we are caught up in between, so that we can navigate our way out of these wars. But Marley said it best. Wars everywhere. Wars in the east, war in the west, wars. We are going through wars. As a matter of fact, the war in Sudan, the war in Ethiopia, wars all over in Africa. None of those wars are important as the war in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia. So the most important war in the world, it's not even the war that happened more than how many years ago between Palestine and Israel. No, the most important war that Western nations wants to stop, but they want to stop because they want to have an advantage over the other. Without that advantage, the war between Russia and Ukraine will not stop. Somebody has to have an edge over the other. So either Russia wins or Ukraine wins. But there can be a compromise, because if there's a compromise, then the other person that is accepting the compromise must have lost and has to take the L. Without which, the most important war that is happening in Ukraine is the most talked about war. But the wars in Africa, it doesn't mean nothing to the world so long as Africans kill themselves. The world is happy because they don't give a shit about Africa. But this is what King H will say. I want Russia to destroy, demolish, obliterate Ukraine, so that those Western powers who are hoping for Ukraine to win will lose, and they won't have the upper edge to win this war. Because the reason why Africa is in the mess they played a big role in it. Wars in Libya was spearheaded by NATO under the leadership of the former President Barack Obama. Took out Gaddafi, and now there's a split between two sides, one fighting for Western nations and the other fighting for Russia, and the war in Libya continues. But if you look at what is actually happening, is also similar to what is going on in Sudan. There's a two side. One is fighting for Russia, the other is fighting for United States. And whoever wins control the territory of, or the nation of Sudan. And then they will what? Answer to whoever is their colonial master. So they are killing themselves only to be subservient to Western nations. This is the conundrum of black nations. This is the conundrum of African nations. Fight to be the main man, only to answer to Western nations, only to answer to Arab nations, only to answer to somebody else. So you kill all black people in Sudan and other parts of Africa just to be a yes man, a puppet. The same reason President Paul Biya is killing many Southern Cameroonians, many Anglophone Cameroonians, is because he wants to answer to France that he's in control of Cameroon, both English and French, so that he can continue doing business with them. This is the conundrum. This is the plight of African nations. We kill ourselves for others to enjoy the resources in the continent of Africa. When will all this stop? The United Nations does not have the interests of Africa. We must get rid of the United Nations out of Africa. The IMF, the European Union, the World Bank, they don't have the interests of African people and the continent of Africa. All they care about is the resources that is in Africa, and somehow gullible African leaders fight among each other to be head, the head in charge of a nation, just to be a puppet to Western power. Africans, we need to wake up, or we will be completely destroyed. This is King Eju, the radical Pan-African actors from Mambazoni. Till next time.